mango ginger. Supreme risings, blessed be to your day. May it be everything you require to create everything that you desire. I'm Papa Samdi, Papa Lucifer Samdi, your spiritual therapist, life coach, alternative healing practitioner, whatever you want to call it. And I want you to understand three things. Healing is destructive. The reason why healing is destructive. The reason why you're deserving but you're not entitled. That faith without the works is dead. And that honesty is not about what you're saying. It's understanding and having the comprehension. Comprehension is transparency. Comprehension is vulnerability. Comprehension, in this case, that we're going to get into, is the aspect of status and motive versus the process and momentum. Status and motive versus process and momentum. Now, I want you to think about this. I'm always talking about with my client. I'm always breaking down to my clients, students, breaking down every chance that I have that teaching moment. I'm always trying to apply that teaching moment, if not to myself, to others around me. That's the value aspect of success. I'd rather be in the aspect of me being honest, in that honesty, transparency with myself, versus the aspect of the status or the motive. The only reason a lot of times I used to think about this during my self-reflect time. I used to think about for myself why I was so keen on looking for others and looking at them and trying to ask questions based on the answer that I wanted to receive. I would only do things based on the answer I wanted to receive. You're going to speak what you want to get. You're only going to ask questions based on what you want to get. The more transparent you are, the broader scope of those questions that you're going to ask. The less resolved you are with yourself, the less the aspects of you not doing that internal work with yourself, the more you're going to seem to be less transparent. Your questions are going to become loaded. You ever heard about somebody giving you a loaded question, or you asking a question that has no matter what the answer is, you feel what I'm saying? No matter what the answer is, that answer don't work in whatever the answer is. Someone ever asks you a question, and no matter how you answer that question, it don't matter. You're gonna come out looking a certain type. You're gonna come out in a certain way of perception. It's gonna validate the perception of how they want to view you. That's the aspect of status or motive. Example of status and motive. Have you ever, when you first wake up or you're inside of a space and someone asks you a question, or they're speaking with you, and you feel this sense of, after the conversation, you feel charged, you feel energized, you feel conducive to being constructive. You desire more of that type of conversation. You desire more of that type of information. You want to comprehend more. So you find yourself keep going back to that space, but then it brings up those emotions like, I never thought about it like that. Things like that, that's your perspective. Momentum is only found in perspective. Your momentum is building the disciplines in widening your perspective. Your status, that status or that motive, it keeps you in a state of predestination. That's how you get stuck in that what we call the predestination narrative. The status. If you make a certain amount of money at your job right now, I remember I look back at myself. I got to understand the past to understand the present, because today is the only day that matters. Today's the only day that matters. I got to understand my past to understand my present. Why my present is the way it is because of how I assess my past. How I assessed my past, when I assessed my past and looking into the aspects of my past, the stuff that I left unresolved is what's setting up my present. And I've talked about this before when we go into aspect. The only person robbing you, guilt tripping you, cheating you out of stuff is you, because you're robbing your future. If I'm not in the present and I'm always in my past and I'm always relishing on my past, the status of my past and the reason that this happened because of this and because of this and because of this and because of this and because of this, and I'm stuck in that narrative with myself, then every fucking time on schedule, all I'm doing is robbing my future. I don't develop skills in the present. If I'm not developing my skills in the present, guess what I'm gonna do? By nature, we don't realize that we're doing it. Every time that I'm sitting there and I'm not developing my skills in the present state, and I'm developing my skills based on my past, my trauma. So my trauma made me this type of man. My trauma made me this type of person. It made me very, very cautious around certain people. I gotta ask myself a real question. Did it make me cautious or did it make me seek complacency? Gotta be honest. Honest conversation. This is what I mean by when I'm sitting with my clients, whether it's in a consultation, we doing sessions, it's not the honesty of it's not what's being said. It's how it's being said. It's understanding why I'm saying it. It's not what's being said, it's why it's being said. It's not what's being done, it's why it's being done. It's understanding and gaining transparency or comprehending and allowing myself to go deeper so I can go beyond the surface. A lot of times for myself, I found myself like, I use an example. As we sitting here in this example. Made a video on my TikTok. This is my 7-year anniversary. My 7-year anniversary. 7-year anniversary. Of phase 7. We'll say phase 7. It's phase 7. Of me shifting and embracing my new reality. My new timeline. I know you've seen videos, heard videos. I've talked about it. We're going to be getting deeper into it in lives and different classes and aspects of you shifting timelines, jumping timelines, that quantum theory aspect. It's a true factor. But as much as it is about the aspects of the energy, that quantum factor, that down here as above is energy, energetic motion, energy and motion. As below, it's emotion. In between that, it's the mental and the psychological, or the program in which it streams through, or that prism point in which that axiom point in which it streams through to come down into this space. So now think about this, shifting your timeline. Shifting your timeline versus you doing it from a place of trying to gain status or based on a motive, the narrative of motive, versus you're doing it based on gaining momentum. When I was working my 9-to-5s, when I was working in the restaurants, all of that was based on motive. I had a motive set. There was a motive set in place for me, which was when we think about so think about the motive as the job. The motive was the job. The amount of energy I put into that job was preset based on my emotional intelligence, my emotional identity. So 9-to-5, let's say I used to work in restaurants. If you're familiar with restaurants, it's not a 9-to-5. It's when you get there and when you leave. But to simplify, we don't say in that 9-to-5 aspect. Regardless of how I felt at the time, I still had to do a job. So I would transmit the energy. This is when we think about transmitting versus transmuting. I would transmit the energy. I would transmit the energy through those thoughts. No matter how I felt, if I was in a bad mood, didn't matter. Then that means I need to put some music in. Now I'm working on that. So now that's the time spent. The emotions is the time spent. Based on that mood that I'm not checking, based on that, I'm upset, I'm going through something, I'm not talking about it, not really dealing with the thoughts. Those thoughts are what connected to that time served. So now it produced a product. In this case, it produced a paycheck. It produced a paycheck. Here's the thing with status and motive. Everything I did with that paycheck was to maintain that status and motive. Since I didn't know what the status and motive was, I could never make the adjustments to the budget of my paycheck. So it didn't matter whether I made a $300 paycheck, a $500 paycheck, a $1,000 paycheck. Didn't matter what paycheck I made. Didn't matter. The value of that product, that paycheck, was always the same. The value of that product was always the same. The value of that product was always the same. Always the same. Always the same. Same bills. So followed by the bills was my entitlements. Yo, I work really hard. I deserve. So before I go to the house, before I go to the store, before I go do this, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to have a drink. Or I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go and buy this to make myself feel good for all the work that I just did. I didn't have a budget in place. And I've talked about this budget before in previous aspects, and we get deeper into it. I didn't have a budget in place. My old budget system, I had to understand what the old budget was. My status, the title of my status, the title of my motive, in which I title it for myself, and I help my clients do the same thing, is the aspect, I was in a 30-70 relationship with everything. I get 30%, everything else gets 70%. I get 30%, everybody else gets 70%. I didn't understand the why. The reason I can only get 30% of all of my earnings or whatever I was doing was because the other 70% was the unresolved. The other 70% was the unresolved on my end. So I gave everybody the 70%, so their perception of me would stay in the aspect of avoiding my own unresolved. So getting the attention, getting the acceptance, getting the acknowledgement, avoiding all of these aspects of filling my emotional voids. So this is when you think about an aspect psychologically, I'm codependent as fuck. The only reason that my job means anything to me is because it gives me the status of a hard worker. It gives me the status of a hard worker. So anybody seeing me work and run up and down the line or do multiple things at my job, it was based on, oh my God, that nigga put in work. So anybody that saw me, they had now I can control the perception of myself, or I can give myself the illusion that I'm controlling the perspective of myself. I'm controlling what's being projected. Here's the problem with that. If you depend on somebody else's perception of your idea of you, you never gain momentum. You only can emulate from the momentum or the setting, as I sip my tea, of what others feel about you. Their feelings, their emotions, their thoughts, and now you're stuck. Now you ramped up into the aspect of, if I can't do this, now I feel guilty, because now everything has a median, or you have an arbitrator in there. If I'm not able to do this for these people, I feel guilty. If I'm not getting a certain amount of attention, I feel insecure. I always have a middleman in the present. It's because of them that I feel guilty. It's because of them that I feel insecure. It's because of this, and this. And all that does is goes back, robs my future, my ability to capitalize. Now becomes the enabling of seeking complacency. Because now all I'm doing is all I was doing for all of those years until I really until the spark happened and all those moments, and we'll get into those moments, how these moments happen, until the moment came up and hit me upside my damn head, to where, what would I be without any of that? And that shit came up. The same way it came in is the same way it was going out. Same way it was going in was the same way it was going out. So I'm unconsciously, because remember, you're already doing it. This is a big key. You're already doing it. I was already timeline jumping. I was already projecting. I was already putting myself in certain positions. I was already doing it. But I was doing it based on status, projection, the light. The projection, the light, the status, the motive. I wasn't doing it based on gaining momentum. I wasn't doing it based on gaining momentum. I wasn't doing it based on embracing the beautiful, destructive points of the process. Why? Because if I'm such a hard worker, if I'm such a hard worker, why when I get off, I'm too tired to do anything? It's the same energy. Same energy. Why can't I do it then? It's the same damn energy. Same energy. Here's the key. I never had any momentum. My momentum was predestination. My momentum was already preset. Prefabricated, pre-programmed. I needed, and I go deep into this. I was still living through the narratives and trying to gain momentum from the status of my relationships with my mother, my status of my relationship with family, my status of a relationship. So since I only can emulate from my unresolved, well, what would I create? You create the lesson plan all day. So now that relationship with my mother, instead of me dealing with that unresolved where I'm not willing, I now create the task directly. That means how I react to it, and indirectly based on how anybody else reacts to it, of my relationships with me being in a relationship. How do I know that I'm doing it? How do you know that you're doing it? What do you say in the beginning of every relationship when you're talking about when you're letting somebody get to know you? Your relationship and someone getting to know you is damn near the 60-40, and we're going to get into what the 60-40 is. The 60% being the masculine or the knowledge, and the 40% being your emotions or your feminine aspect. So you spend 60% of the time inside of that beginning of that relationship, giving this person that 70% of you. You give them just enough information to maintain your status of yourself, what you required, and you spend the other time displaying or talking about how other people made you feel and how other people acted around you. And now that defines the status of where you're at. See, I was defining the status of where I was at based on others. So even when it came to taking accountability, it was very lack. I took a lack of accountability. I took some accountability, but my accountability had to come at the cost of somebody else. It can never be the reason why I was always tired and always running rampant was because when I wake up in the AM, instead of me sitting with myself for 15 to 20 minutes in a day, I automatically hop on my phone. I automatically hop on my phone. I automatically hop on social media and consume what feeds the identity. I spend more time on the phone with other people discussing people, i.e., behaviors and patterns, and events, i.e., the conceptualized idea, but it was always based on the same ideal: survival. Survival. This is how I noticed that it changed. That's how I noticed it changed. When I got into the aspects of my well-being of myself, it stopped being less about what I was doing and more about why I was doing it. And that's an honest point that in the beginning, that shit fucked me up because it gives you the thought process of, man, I should have did this 3 years ago. I should have did this 4 years ago. I should have went to school. I should have did this. I should have did this. I should have did that. I should have did these things, but I didn't because I wasted time because it was this, this, and this. And then you go down this whole loop of self-defeat, the whole loop of self-loathing, self-defeat, self-sabotage, this whole self-destructive process that leaves you back where you at. Trying to regain the status or the identity. So now that I've worked myself up, now I'll go do some things. So now for a week or two, I might work out. For a week or two, you might go fast. You might fast for 3 days. You might fast for 3 days. But that third day, where your stomach is hurting and you're like, shit, my stomach hurt, and your moods now being exposed to you. How you've always needed to, you're basically seeking stimulation came to you because you went in based on a motive. I'm fasting because of this. I'm taking this many days off because of this. So I can achieve enlightenment. I can achieve balance, or actually, i.e., acquire balance. But now you're sitting there for 3 days, and all you're thinking about is the future, what you're going to eat when you're off your fast. Not saying you're not thinking about the fast, but you're stuck in context. You ain't feeling shit. You're thinking context. And since now that you're enveloped in context, you don't actually be able to sit with the feeling. This is when we think about psychologically. It's whenever you feel anxiety, one of the exercises I give my clients is, I want you to express actually how you're feeling. Let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation about how you're feeling right now. It's okay to feel that way. It's okay that you feeling anxious and anxiety, you feeling this type of way. But that's what's coming to the surface. Why do you feel anxious? Why do you feel anxious? Why do you feel anxious? Why is this, what is this coming up? Let's deal with that. What was your first, let's peel back those layers. Let's get to the examples of where you've seen it before. This when we talk about inner child, most of this is based on your childhood. If not your current life, the current life and timeline, a past timeline, when we get deeper into past life regression. But we got to start from this starting point. Let's get into those feelings. Let's sit with it. Let's acknowledge them. Because where do your emotions come from? They come from the innermost aspect of yourself. They come from your inner child. How you developed your emotions, you just been replaying that loop over and over and over again. You haven't really sat with them long enough. You sit with them just long enough to think about it like this. Remember when you was in school Remember when you was in school and you were sitting in the classroom and all you're doing is looking at the clock? You waiting for the clock to hit 3 o'clock. You waiting for the clock to hit 2:15, 3 o'clock. You're looking for the clock to hit a certain time so you can get out, so you can get done. That's what you're doing every time you get stuck on the status. The motive. Your only motive, one of the things, excellent example of this. I remember one thing my mentor taught me, my mentors and my managers when we were going through training. One of my mentors always told me, are you running the shift or is the shift running you? Are you managing the shift or is the shift managing you? I didn't really understand what that meant until I was like, okay, what does that mean? I had to ask the question. See what I said? See, before, I was afraid to ask the question. I was dependent upon seeing it. So I would see it, then I would try to act it out. That wasn't what I was supposed to do in that point. I was supposed to ask, that was my moment to ask a question. See, when it comes to developing our emotional intelligence, it's really looking at the context of that space. In the times where I wasn't asking a question. The times where I didn't want to ask questions, or I felt like I'd be a burden, or I should have known it already. Look at where I'm at. They gave me these keys. They gave me this space. I have this status. That means I shouldn't be asking those types of questions. That shit left me laid back. That was the hindrance. That was the hindrance. I'm sitting here not asking questions when I should. It was learning how and when to ask the question. When to get with my boss, when to sit with my mentors and ask those questions. It was okay not to know. See, the biggest thing when it comes to the aspects of status or motive is only based on what you know of. It's only based on what you know of, so naturally everything now becomes an assumption. When I was actually building momentum and actually going through processes, the things that my managers said to me at a point in time enveloped differently. And then as I was able to sit in the present moment with that and develop my presence in the present, in the now state, now when the anxiety, the feelings, the thought or a memory of conversations, countless lectures from my pops. Now I could actually bring him into the present and understand, gain more clarity of why he was saying those things, why he felt that way. On the surface, this is when we get into it when I'm talking with my clients. On the surface, it was exactly what it was. I didn't want to accept that he had a certain status, so with that status, he was supposed to do certain things. He was my father. He was my dad. That was my mom. They were supposed to do certain things based on the status. So now my motive and my status is only emulated based off what they didn't do, or what they didn't do, I'm gonna do, or I'm gonna make my own way, or what they did do, I'm gonna do better. But never at any point in time was I actually sitting with why they process things that way. Why my mom processed thoughts that way. Why my dad processed things that way. Why people around me were stuck in that process. Because I was stuck in the status of being a product of my environment. So now I got stuck in the predestination. So now that you're stuck in predestination, this is where we get that timeline of, you got everything I didn't have when I was little. I tried to do everything for you, da-da-da-da-da. When in reality, it all boiled down to the emotion. It always boiled down to emotions. If I was not emotionally present, then I'm not really there. Where you're not willing, I break this down multiple times. Where I was not willing, I was creating multiple tasks and responsibilities. Where I was not willing to manage my time, I created the energetic footprints, the energetic imprints for a manager, the need for a manager, where I was not willing to listen to myself and take that time, 15 minutes to listen to myself. I created the energetic imprint or the status or the motive to be fed of somebody listening to me. But here's the key. All of that shit came at a price. Remember what I just said earlier on in the first part of this video? Remember what I said earlier on in the first part of this video? I wasn't used to creating a budget. I wasn't used to creating my emotional budget. I wasn't used to lining up my expenses and I wasn't used to lining up things based on my well-being. Everything that I was doing was based on survival. So it was use it all up, go get some more. It's always going to be there. Use it all up, go get some more. Burn out, run till burnout, and then go sit down or allow something else to charge me up. But then you think about it. If I'm stuck on status, I didn't realize how much status was I didn't realize how much status was looking for status for myself really messed up, it was conditioning me to only be able to emulate from where I came from. So now the same conversations that I had with my pops, I was still having. The same outlook on life, I developed that same outlook. I developed that same status. I didn't have or gain any momentum. So that meant the job was my motivation. So as long as I'm looking for motive, status, that's how you get stuck in this falsehood of progress, movement. So now if I have the job and I work the job for so many days, so many months, so many years, by this time I should have a car. By this time I should have a house. By this time I should be in a relationship. By this time I should have some kids. By this time I should do this, this, and this. But I was missing, this is the key when I talk about timeline jumping. Here's the key with that timeline jump. I wasn't looking at what I'll call the Easter eggs. I wasn't looking at the Easter eggs or was right there in front of me. Because every time that I wanted to get a car, that I got a car, I got this vehicle, I got this car, or whatever it was, I noticed that the status symbol of it, or what powered that status symbol, that symbol itself, was I had no example. I had written out no example, no coding. I didn't code anything to the aspects of me having a car. The only memories I had of thinking about getting a car was every time my mom told my pops we should get a car, and my pops would always say, so we gonna live in the car? We gonna live in the car? Gotta pay the bills of the house first. So now I created an entire environment that every time that I got a car, even crazier part, it was dated to match that energy. It was dated to match that space. So I have the car, I'm making the payments on the car. But since I'm not used to creating a budget, since I'm so stuck on motive and status, guess what I use the car for? At first, I tell myself I'm going to go to work, take my mom where she need to go, do things of that nature. But then the distraction would come in. Now that I got the car, now I can go do this. Now the door will open up to me driving my car over here, driving my car, doing all this other stuff. I don't understand budgets. I don't understand expenses. I don't understand these things. So what am I doing? Of course, I'm doing the bare minimum of what I've seen. I only can do it based on what I've seen. So of course, I go get the oil change every once in a while, keep gas in the car, keep it washed. I was doing surface level shit. But I'm thinking about, I'm not thinking about the mileage on the car. I'm not thinking about the mileage on the car. I got the year of the car was 2003, 2004, or 1990, when my first car that I bought was a night from 1991, and I bought that car in fucking 2008, 2010. Car had over 100,000 miles on it. Since I'm not present, the car's not present, so the maintenance is different. The maintenance is different. How I achieve that momentum is different. But since I'm thinking about status, I'm thinking about service. I'm thinking about the surface. As long as it looked good, I'm all right. Now think about that aspect psychologically. You keep doing that. Every year you buy a new car because you can. But now your credit's impacted. But the only reason you buying a new car is because the last car got repoed, it got in a wreck, it got fucked up, whatever it was. Got in a wreck, got repoed, you couldn't make the payments. So then that buy here, pay here lot you went to, even though that shit didn't go on your credit, but you got it financed, now it goes on your credit. Now your credit score fucked up. The manifestation of your emotional intelligence is your credit score. So your credit score fucked up. Your credit score is now at a 480, 380, 2 something. And that's your opening to gain momentum. See, that honesty and understanding transparency is sitting in that moment and learning how to use that moment, that trigger. This is what we call the trigger. When I'm looking at my credit score, I'm like, my credit score is a 380 fucking 5 across the fucking board. Equifax, TransUnion, and the third one. I never remember what the third one is. And I'm looking at that shit. Instead of me sitting with the new process that's been presented to me of, nigga, I need to learn how to get my credit right. What would I do? I only can emulate. Well, I ain't got to worry about my credit. I already found a used car lot. Let's go get another used car. My taxes, bonuses from my job, whatever it was, whenever the money come up. So I never had the opportunity. When we're stuck in status, I never had the opportunity to capitalize. I always took that opportunity, so the opportunity became an obstacle in which I was trying to seek complacency. I never developed the skill set that I develop now. That's why I said earlier on, it's been 7 years, literally been 7 years for me. For example, my credit is A1. My credit is in a good place right now. It's at a nice little 7. It's like 715 across the board. But the momentum behind that, the momentum that pushed my score that way, is actually sitting with those moments of, why was my credit not good in the first place? Because I was too dependent on status, how people looked at me, how people felt about me. I was stuck in that context. I didn't want to feel it. I let other people show me their feelings. And if other people showing me their feelings, then I'm good. As long as they feeling good, then I can feel good. But it was secondary. My purpose was fucked up because I was not sitting in my own emotional space. I wasn't sitting in my own emotional space. I wasn't sitting with myself those days and those nights. I always put myself in a position to where I felt I had to be a certain way, and keep moving a certain fucking way. When we talk about the energy and motion, so guess what would happen naturally? When I came into I'm awakened and I'm aware and I'm enlightened and I'm conscious. Same thing. See, I've talked about this before. Now we're getting deeper into these subjects. The same way I worked my jobs and was in relationships and everything I was doing was the same. That's why I never could get the feeling of it. And when I did get the feeling, I didn't know how to sit with the feeling. I didn't know how to capitalize on the feeling. I didn't know how to capitalize on what I was being taught and being shown. See, when you're sitting in this space and you got a lot of unresolved trauma, the shit that you ain't wanting to deal with, you only gonna do it based on to a certain extent. As long as your motive stays intact. As long as your status, as long as you're able to transfer your old status, your old skill set to the new status. But when you're in the aspect of momentum, gaining clarity, gaining discipline, coming into the aspects of dedicating yourself to yourself, learning yourself, that's a whole different game. Because it allows you to actually be. For me now, I'm in a state of being. I'm in a state of becoming. Further becoming better in a state of being. Every day I get to wake up at 4 a.m. By 4:30, I'm out of the bed and everything from my meditation, my stretches, couple push-ups, do my crunches, do my little basic workout, my basic beginning, get my blood flowing. By 5:15, I'm getting dressed and suited up. By 5:30, I'm out the house, go on my run, do my workout on my run, squats and whatever else I'm doing. Get to the house by 7. And now I can sit with myself at 9 o'clock at night. I can sit with myself and be like, last year is when I first started doing this. The year before that was the upheaval or the overhauling of me undergoing the internal aspects of putting the formula together. On the surface, it looks as, and I've explained these things, I always say this, 2020, COVID saved my damn life. COVID forced me to sit the fuck down because I kept asking, I just need more time to sit down with my shit. 2020 is when I started Godical Alchemist LLC. Going public. 2008, but back in 2018 when I first started going live. When I was doing my Facebook lives. And guess where I was doing my lives at? Right in front. I would get to my job earlier than everybody before 7 o'clock because I had to hop on the bus or I had to walk to work. I had the opportunity to walk or take the bus to work or take the Uber or Lyft or whatever. I'm at my job before anybody else is there, before it started. But before that, early in the end of 2018, it started with me writing out the God thoughts. Write out my nice little, what I call the healing prompts now, writing them out until one day I was sitting there. It was too cold outside for me to type. It was too cold for me to type. I had some gloves on. I was like, I can hold my phone. And that was my first 30-minute video. That 30-minute video turned into a 45-minute video. That 45-minute video turned into an hour video. That turned into my lecture. That turned into me doing lectures. Those videos turned into me doing lectures. That turned into me doing the God Hour pod. That turned into me doing the podcast. That me going into the podcast, I learned music. I learned how to put music together. I learned how to do video ads. All of that aspect was me actually in real time doing the work because I was present. I wasn't worried about status. I stopped less at the beginning. I can't even lie to you. I was worried about status. It's how many people are going to look at this video. But then I realized something. I got an answer. I asked the question, got an answer. I remember one day I was sitting there and I made a post from 2018. And I remember I was sitting there in 2020 and I was like asking for the answer of like, should I step forward and go public with providing the space, providing the therapy space? And I remember I was sitting there in the living room, sitting there. This is how you gain momentum. Sitting in the living room, if somebody sent me a message in Messenger, it was like, yo, I just read your post about, are you living, are you existing? And yo, that right there, that gave me that shit hit. It hurt the way it hit. It hurt, but I needed that shit to sting. I needed that burn. Thank you. I sat there for about 50. I sat there during that day doing all my other stuff, but that stuck in my mind. I sat with that feeling. It didn't go through the channels of anxiety, anxiousness. It didn't go through all of these old channels. So I could use it as momentum and not based on status. Up until now, it's 2022. So much has happened in 2022 up to this point that brought me to the point that I'm at now. But that momentum changed me. Through that aspect, I learned different processes. Like, for example, how I wake up. If you look at previous videos from last year when I was in my workout gear and I'm going for my run, you can see me doing videos that way. But before that, you can go look at my YouTube channel as an example. Establish the example through self being transparent. You look at my first video, the first videos on my YouTube channel go all the way down. It's like 426 videos now. Go look at those first videos. All those videos were literally in front of my job at the time. So the excuse went away. I can't do this because I got to go to work. Nigga, you at work an hour early, not doing anything. There's your opportunity. How are you going to capitalize on it? Before that, I was home. Before that, I remember in that point in time, going through the things I was going through, I was homeless. Now I'm inside of the space where I'm at now. I said all this to help you gain that clarity with yourself of you're going to have to let go of that status. You're going to have to let go of that status. You're going to have to let go of this feeling of you feel like you need to continuously be hurt. You're going to have to let go of this feeling that you continuously need the pressure of being stressed out in order to do anything. Because as long as I felt the need to be stressed, I never could feel or accept everything. It had to be till burnout. So I work until I wasn't stressed. But if I'm working, if I started stressed and I ended not stressed, in order for me to keep going forward, I had to get stressed all over again. I had to get worried all over again. I had to have that feeling all over again. That's transferring. That's the emancipation or transferring the debt. But when I learned to transmute the momentum, it was taking something, nothing, to something, to nothing once again. Nothing to something, to nothing once again. That something is you. That something is you. That becoming is becoming nothing again to actually step into that next space. How you going timeline jump if you don't know what you're seeing inside of the space? I give you an example before we close this out. My mindset was like, I remember when I first learned aspect in the business aspect, of when I really sat down and I learned that when you have a business and you put things in your business name, like your car, for example, it had to be a certain way, like a truck, like truck, SUV. So like everybody I saw that owned their own business that had Range Rovers and Benzes and 745s and the big boy Mercedes. And I'm thinking it's based on status. I'm looking at it through status. So I'm saying, ooh, I want to get my own shit and make my money so I can do that. I didn't understand that it wasn't based on status. It was actually based on momentum. Because a car 6,000 pounds and above can be written, the value of that vehicle can be written off. So the money that I put into a vehicle that's a 2022 in that using that we in the present state, if I buy a vehicle right now and I buy the truck that I've visualized myself in is a Chevy Silverado. The way that shit, I'm seeing them shits all over the place. I'm seeing them, and the more, instead of me looking at it from status, like, damn, must be nice, the self-defeating talk, I'm like, where am I seeing it at? So if I take my walk or I take my run, and then halfway through my run, there's the food line's right up the street from me, and that's the reason why I go pee, because after I drank water, you gonna have to go pee. There's always a Silverado sitting in the parking lot. Oh, that's me pulling up after I got done at the gym. My mind automatically goes there. That's my Easter egg. If I go for a walk after I'm done with sessions during the day, dissipating energy from dealing with working with one of my clients, and I walk up, there's a smoke shop up the street, and I see a Silverado parked out there or an Impala parked out there. Oh, that's me after getting done with a session. I'm seeing myself in that space. I'm accepting myself in the now in that space. I'm accepting that as momentum, as an opportunity to go forward, and not as an obstacle of, I wish that I could do that now, robbing my future, robbing me of the opportunity of my future, robbing myself of the momentum. The only person that's cheating you out of your life is you. The only person that's fucking up anything in your life is you. And where you're not willing to accept that with yourself, you've emulated over and over and over again different examples and experiences in order to conceptualize your status of where you're at. So you're forgetting who you actually are. You're forgetting who the fuck you actually are. So by the time you come to who you really are, it's so misshapen that you can't even embrace the impact of it. I desire you to be the fucking best. It starts with you. It ends with you. From this point right here, this is your beginning. This is your ending by your choice. This is your ending of how you used to think, of what you used to think, and your beginning of how to think. Gnostic teachings. This is the ending of what you used to think and the beginning of you evaluating and assessing based on how you're thinking. All of this shit is mental. You can say it over and over again. The universe is mental, but you don't know what it means. It's alchemy, but you don't know how to do it. Because you're trying to make it something you're trying to make it something outside of you. I desire you once again to be the fucking best. I can't want it more than you, but I do desire you to be the fucking best, but I can't do the work for you. But I can, and I have created the space to do the work with you. The links above this video, the links in my bio. Starts with that consultation. get a consultation reading, and then we can actually start building up that sessions. I've created the space. I have the purpose of creating that space in order to help you and aid you in your growth. But you gotta want to go there. You gotta want to go there. All I can do is provide the example. It's up to you to take it in and apply it to your lessons. Don't worry, you ain't gotta do it by yourself. I got you. This new reality that you're trying to come into is going to come at the price of your old one. Everything you're trying to bring into your space right now is going to cost you, looking at everything, it's going to cost you the loss. You can't be afraid to lose because you're not losing anything. You ain't going to lose shit. If it's meant for you, it'll be there. Y'all know, we love saying that saying. If it's meant for you, it'll be there. And all you got to do is show up. Papa Samdi. All I'm doing is showing up. All I'm doing is getting better, and showing the fuck up. Everything that I map out and I've mapped out in the greatest of detail requires me requires the consistency of me becoming better and better. Today's the only day that matters. I'm going to sit here and finish my self-reflection. And when you're ready, the space is there, is ready for you to invest in. Remember, we started from top to bottom. We started from above to below. Now we go from below to above, as within, as without. This level of honesty requires, true honesty requires transparency and vulnerability. With that transparency, the more transparent you become, the more vulnerable you become, the more you sit inside that space. Now you'll actually be able to do the work that is required to gain everything that you deserve, and you'll let go of that, the antics of feeling that you're entitled just because you showed up. And then you'll be able to embrace why the beauty of the healing process, the beauty of the getting to know yourself intimately is so you'll be able to to embody and embrace the destructive narrative that is necessary for you to become the authentic you. I love you. We love us. Ashe.